Hello and welcome to a beautiful week and welcome to PM Express. And today we are looking at the Cedi depreciation. We are looking at the history of Cedi depreciation, and also we are looking at whichever regime that managed this Cedi better, because the argument has been going on that within certain regimes the Cedi seems to hold better, and then with other regimes the Cedi seems to depreciate more. How true is this? Have there been any independent assessments? Because it's all been based on politics. But today we need to go to a bit school, because I am a little bit of an illiterate when it comes to currency and how it manages. But one thing I know for sure, which is the elementary, is that if you seem to import more than you export, then your currency seems to be a bit shaky. And we've always been like that from the days of the colonial master, who used to dig up the goods from the soil and ship it out to their lands. When we took over, all we did was just accelerate it. Worst case, we did not accelerate it by we ourselves digging and sending it to them. No, we get them to come and dig it and send it back to them. So I think it's double jeopardy, if you'd ask me. Oil is being dug by foreigners, gold is being dug by foreigners, bauxite will be dug out by foreigners. They bring in their capital, and so they take their money away. So how will this Cedi, what is this fundamentals that Baumia keeps talking about? What is that fundamentals? Because as far as the layman, you and I are concerned, we don't own any resources here. The resources just happens to be here, but it's all been mortgaged. Even cocoa, it's been mortgaged. So how will this Cedi ever remain at this, same currency, though that you know that in 3 years' time, this is what the Cedi rate is going to be, and therefore I can make a 3-year projection. Will that ever happen? What are the fundamentals? That's what we want to find out after my layman explanation of the economy. My name is Nana Sakwa, the fourth chief of the Little Republic of Akwamu Edumasa. When I come back, we are talking currency depreciation. Don't go. Well, thank you very much for staying with me. In studio is Courage Boti, who is not a stranger to this show at all and is a development economist, joining us later. But let me say welcome. Courage, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you on the show. Always good to have you on the show.
Sure.
And then joining us later on Skype, via Skype, will be Charles Mensah, who's a currency analyst. And so he will definitely, between the two of them, they will take us to school. Courage, what they say economic fundamentals, what do they mean by fundamentals?
Great. A very good evening to our listeners. So it's an interesting debate it chanced on Sunday, apparently in response to the former president. The vice president sought to provide explanations as to probably who does better. But to your question, what are economics fundamentals? So an economy is like the part of the body, isn't it? The whole body combined. It has different parts. In this case, we have what we call the real sector, where production happens, goods and services. These people produce cassava, these ones produce this one produce machines, and all of them combined make up the real sector. There is the services sector as well, where what you do, the kind of job you do here, what multimedia does, the banks and all of that are also in there. And of course the agriculture sector and all those other sectors play a role.
Do I come under the real sector?
So
I'm in the service sector.
So you will fall more under the services sector. Yeah.
Sector.
Now, and then so different other sectors that make up this economy. At the end of the day, we need certain indicators that show the health of this economy. Just as you as a human, when you go to the hospital, the doctors will check your temperature, they will check your weight, they will check your pulse rate, they will check your heart rate and all of that, and at the end determine whether you are healthy or not. So the fundamentals of the economy is really those things that help us to determine whether the economy is doing well, or not doing well. And in essence, we call them macroeconomic indicators. Macro because it's looking at the economy as a whole and not just one individual. It's looking at what is happening not only to government payments, which we call the fiscal sector. It also looking at the monetary payment, the monetary system, what we call the monetary policy. So you would typically be talking about things like exchange rate. You would typically be talking about things like inflation. You would typically be talking about things like interest rate. You would be talking about fiscal deficit. You'd be talking about budget balance and primary balance and all of that, government expenditure, how they generate revenue and stuff. Now, there are standard indicators. Even though they may be, there is no benchmark for, say, exchange rate to the point that you could say this is the level of depreciation or appreciation that when you attain your okay, even though there may not be an explicit level to gauge your fiscal deficit against, notionally, when you are doing well, you should know, you should define your parameters. For instance, the Bank of Ghana set at its medium-term target that inflation rate should be between 6% and 10% over the medium term. Everything they do from now on or from the past till now is to make sure inflation get to that level. They believe that is the level of inflation required for normal operation of the economy. No one prefers zero inflation. It's not good for businesses. And then no one also like excessive jump in inflation, because then prices are unpredictable. So you want a normal level of inflation, which in our case we think between 6 and 10% is appropriate. The current government feels that fiscal deficit really, which is the difference between how much revenue you are generating in a given year and then how much you plan to spend. That difference is what we call, when you express as a percentage of your GDP, that is what we call fiscal deficit. That actually tells how much you borrow. If the difference between how much you will spend and how much money you are earning is so large, it means you need to go to the open market and borrow, because in our current circumstances, concessional financing is limited. In a multilateral financing and getting money from donor partners and all the grants and stuff like that are very limited, because we call ourselves a middle income country. So that difference actually tells how much you need to go to the capital market to borrow. And then so containing that deficit doesn't only help stabilize the economy, it also helps reduce the pace of debt accumulation. And that is why you see that this current government is saying they want to cap that fiscal deficit at 5%, and they want to make it a law that from now going you can't exceed that. So that is a notional target they've set for themselves. But really, fundamentals of the economy as those indicators that I mentioned, the exchange rate, interest rates, inflation, what is happening to all of this, because they have consequence for how businesses will thrive or otherwise. So that is how you assess the health of economy, your fundamentals of the economy. If one side is going wrong, you expect it to show signals in other indicators.
Let me go on Skype, and Charles Mensah has joined us on Skype, and Charles is a currency analyst, and so he will help us. Welcome, Charles.
Nana, good evening.
Good evening. Charles, we're looking at the currency, and I don't know if you, in my intro, I was saying that in my layman Edumasa degree economics, we've always known that we seem to shipping more things than we send out. And so we are not expanding. Every resource we have, belongs to one multinational or the other. With all these, how does one stabilize the currency? Because we hear so much political talk. I did better, but it's always been the same. Oil is for somebody, gold is for someone, cocoa is mortgaged. Everything that's of value, the capital doesn't come from Ghana. Are you able to stabilize your currency based on these, my notion of fundamentals?
You are right to some extent. When you look at our currency, for instance, we always match it to the US dollar. So I'm going to speak to the US dollar. Now, over the last couple of years, I think fundamentally, the economy has been very rapid, because it could have been worse. Because if you have a country where in the last 2 quarters, I think late last year and then beginning of this year, the FPSO, which was supposed to generate the oil for us, was shut down and for servicing. Now, it means that expected revenue from the oil sector, which otherwise would have gone to increase the total value or the volume of forex that are put to this country, went down. Now, if the oil value is going to go down and our demand for forex is equally staying constant because we are going to pay the loans that borrow, because we've taken a lot of foreign loans in the past, and we are still taking some foreign loans. When the time is due, we are supposed to service those foreign loans. Equally, you have traders or importers who would have been given credit for items that they imported from China, from US, or from UK. They equally would need dollars to pay. So there's a pressure on the local currency, which will be exchanged for a forex. Ideally, if we had volumes of oil, volumes of gold, volumes of cocoa accruing into us, then we will not have any challenge. But where the volumes are not there, or the value addition is not there, the demand for the forex would always outstrip the supply. When I outstrip it, the exchange rate is bound to go up. Fortunately for us, the fundamental has been right. If not, exchange rate would have been even more than what we're experiencing now.
What's the exchange rate now? Because there's the argument 4.5 or 4.7. So I mean, I don't know what's the exchange rate now.
Oh, I think it's hovering around 4.6. Yeah.
4.6.
Yeah.
And to the with the other currencies, to the pound, CFA.
I think that it depends on, because we are dealing more with the US, but pound it's about 6.15 or.
And is there any way it's going to go down, or are we are going up from here? Because it always seems to go up.
It was stable. It was stable, but in terms of going down drastically, it would require us ensuring that our demand for foreign items would reduce. That's one. That's why I like the president's statement about Ghana beyond aid, which means that we are going to eat what we go and can what we cannot eat. So we would spend more money on our local staff. We will not import things. That's critical. So when we are doing that, and we are doing value addition for our cocoa, we are doing value addition for our timber, we are doing value addition for our oil. Nana, trust me, it would go down and go down, because we will not be importing things that we're manufacturing here at the cheaper cost.
Okay, Charles, hold on for me and let me come to studio, because in studio as a development economist and as a layman, is there any such thing as an actual economy? Because you guys give us all these technical things, but for us, it's at the end of the month, what's in your pocket, how much you dispense, which to us is the actual economy. Is there anybody measuring the actual economy rather than all these technical things? And how is the actual economy?
Point of correction, I'm not a development economist.
Okay.
I would just say I'm an economist.
You're an economist.
Yeah. Is there an actual economy?
Yeah. What's my viewers, they are sitting home, they are prepaid, they are lorry fares, school fees, you know.
You see,
Those are the actual ones.
Let's not pretend these things we are, of course I can understand, but let's not pretend these things we are talking about are abstract. They are really not. You go to the market every day, you buy goods and services every day. This thing we talk about exchange rate is not existing in the air. The laptop you have in front of you is imported, it's not produced here.
Exactly.
What it means is that normally inflation rate in the advanced countries could be very low. US, as it stands now, their preferred measure of inflation is around, I think the last time I checked, 1.9%. They want the inflation to be at 2%. In the UK, they want it to be at 2%. It's way below that, and they are even desiring they push it there. What it tells you is that a year on, when you go to the UK,
Japan was zero,
of course, there are countries that are even negative.
And the new finance minister was promising about 0.5 or something.
Even in Africa here, there are countries with zero negative inflations and all of that.
Which means prices are stable for a long time.
Exactly. That is really what it means, that between any reference period, prices are largely stable. If you go to the UK or US, wherever this is produced, over a year, you are fairly sure that the price is going to go up, not by any substantial amount. So assuming this laptop is sold to you, say, $1,000, if I go from Ghana to import this laptop, and then my CD keeps galloping, all other things being equal, I wouldn't go buy that and come and incur a cost. I'll pass it on to you. So the value of goods and services that we consume every day on the market reflect the depreciation as we see it. Really, that is what it is. If we say inflation is rising in Ghana, it only means that between now and then the next month, when you go to the market, your prices are likely to change. Between last year and this year, in fact, May inflation printed, I think, 9.8%. What it means is that between May 2017 and May 2018, prices of goods and services are increased by 9.8%. That is really what it means. So if inflation is stable and it's not growing that much, between a previous year and then a reference period in this year, you should expect prices of goods and services to stay largely unchanged, or by, if they are increasing, by minimal amounts, so that you can fairly predict your life. So that when you are paid, say, a 5,000 CD a month, the real value of your money is not 5,000, it is the amount of goods and services you can buy with it. They measure inflation in a basket. That basket contains goods that normally a household would buy. The food items, the core cards, and then all those other things. So they are made up, they are put into a basket, food basket and non-food basket. And then so the inflation means that if inflation grew by 10%, it means that...
Is petrol in one of those baskets?
Yeah, of course, transports and all of that is in there. So what it means is that between whatever period to whatever period they are referring to, if inflation increased by 10%, it means you will need 10% more money to be able to buy the same goods you used to be buying, isn't it? So then stable inflation, it's not existing in isolation somewhere. It's not hanging in the air somewhere. It's something we experience every day. And it's imperative that the fiscal authorities and those in charge, the monetary policy framework and all of that, ensure that there is stable prices. By prices, I mean exchange rate, inflation, and of course all the other price measures, interest rate and all of that. So the real economy is with us. The woman paying the child's school fees will grow from year to year if there's inflation, because they charge school fees based on the inputs, the things the schools buy, the books, the chalks, the other things, and of all the input that they need to make a school run. If prices are increasing on the market, the teachers will increase their school fees because they need money to buy those things for your child to study. So inflation is not existing in isolation. If it goes up, it means you, that poor mother sitting in your village, you need to pay more to be able to take care of your child's educational needs. Same as hospital, same as every other social endeavor you can think about. So the real economy is with us. Maybe the understanding hasn't been made so simple to everyone, but it is not an abstract something.
Let me go to Charles. Charles, at the moment, what happens is when the CD to dollar is shaky, then the central bank will inject a bit more dollars into the system to sort of balance it. Are we stuck with that, or is there going to be, is there any other method, or that's what's going to happen when the CD starts going down, then the central bank injects dollars into the system to bring it down, and so far and so forth. Central bank also needs to hold some of this dollars so that they have some ammunitions to fire when they. I mean, is that what is left, or there's another way of balancing the currency?
I think that there are so many ways of balancing the currency. What the central bank will usually do is that, yes, they will inject some forex into the system, but that's only temporary. The critical point is to look at the fundamentals. Like I did say, the fundamentals are solid as we speak. We used to have problem with energy access and energy costs. Fortunately, most of the energy companies now are using gas, and gas is cheaper. So it means that the energy cost is gradually coming down, and industry is enjoying that side. And when industry is enjoying a cheaper energy cost, it's passed on into all and sundry. In itself would help the economy. In itself will solve a lot of problems. But while we have a fundamental challenge in the economy, no matter how much injection you put into the economy in terms of bank funds, it will be swallowed. Because the system would consume all this forex and then import goods with it. And now, if you have the fundamentals where the economy is producing things, for instance, let me give you a typical example. If you take the school feeding program, for instance, and the bin of the school feeding program, they are using rice, and the rice is grown within the community where the schools are. That means that we are not going to import $1 million worth of rice to feed our kids. It means that the kids are going to be dependent on local produce. Now, if we are not going to use $1 million, then Bank of Ghana will never inject any $1 million. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. So we should be looking at a targeted approach. So I love food for the government program being
planting for food and jobs.
Yeah, planting, which is in itself is. I'm hoping that we can then process the excess production that comes. We can can the excess production that comes, and then we can distribute it across the system that we have, so that we won't have a lot of risk. And then the following 2 years, 3 years, we are importing tomatoes, we are importing onions, we are importing this. These are the real issues that when we address it, it solves a lot of problems for you and I. And then Bank of Ghana can then relax and then concentrate on the monetary policy and ensure that we will not inject forex in there. Now, in terms of the requirement for forex, government itself would need forex to service the loans that they took from foreigners. Because when anytime we are raising bonds and we go abroad, traveling, what it is that if they give us dollars, we have to pay them in dollars. So in 6 months' time, we need dollars to pay them. If we don't pay them, so we will not allow that to happen. So therefore, we need that. I would love a situation where most of our requirements will be done through stock market, and then raise CD equivalent, and then use the money here. And then when it comes to everything, we'll use CD everything. This is where Ghana would have a lot of advantage. It will benefit everybody.
Okay, Charles, hold on. Let me come to studio. Courage. Can the country say, listen, we are now trying to target 2 cedis to $1. This is where we are moving towards, and therefore we are cutting A, B, C, D, or increasing X, Y, Z to move the currency from 2 to 1? Because, it's like we are never satisfied. Oh, it's too much. It's the dollar is now 4 to 1. Oh, it's too much. 4.2. Oh, in TB that 4.78. We are always complaining. I mean, so can we sit down as a nation and say, listen, we want to move from, maybe 2 Ghana cedis to a dollar, and that's the operational figure, and therefore we're going to start chopping or increasing things, or it's absurd to even think of that.
I risk being a bit theoretical, but I can't help it. There are largely 3 regimes of exchange rate management. The flexible exchange rate regime, where the forces of demand and supply, how much people want as against how much is available, determine price. As against the fixed exchange rate regime, where the central bank at any point in time decides what the exchange rate should be. And that's against a combination of the two, which you call dirty float or managed float. And it's the kind we are practicing. No country really explicitly practices a flexible exchange rate regime. There is always some level of control. In the flexible system, like I said, the forces of demand and supply, how much is available as against how much people need, will determine prices. And that is what every capitalist society thrives. Even in Ghana, interest rate setting, prices of goods and services on the market. So if you really want more, or if you really want prices to come down, you make more available to stabilize price. That is it. In our kind of system, we have, and then the IMF, I can't recall the year, but as one of the preconditions for becoming a member of IMF, you need to operate a flexible exchange rate regime. I can't recall the year Ghana signed on to it, but we are a member of that. And the advantages are there. I mean, why you should operate a fixed exchange rate. It used to be the case in the past that after every budget is read, the government put out, this is what our exchange rate will be for the year, and it stays there. All that government does is provide the FX to support that, and that is where we have what we call quantitative controls in place. Sometimes you try to restrict what people should spend money on, what people shouldn't spend money on, all of that. But we all say that those kind of system doesn't lead to efficiency. If someone wants to trade computers and then he finds the money to go and buy them, so be it. You don't restrict importation of computers because you want to avoid currency depreciation or currency demand pressures, right? That is how it works. So we have signed on to the IMF as members, and then there are rules we need to abide by. One of them includes a flexible exchange rate regime. So we can't, at this stage, we can't fix our exchange rate system. And a lot of countries that have used that are coming out of it. Egypt, somewhere last year, until last year, they had pegged their currency to the euro. So what they are saying in essence is that we need X amount of Egyptian pound for maybe a unit of the dollar. That is how they fixed it. And then it's been like that all through, so it doesn't change. But as a precondition for even IMF supporting them out of the mess they've created for themselves, they had to float it. Nigeria, currently, it's not completely flexible, but they have a fixed exchange rate kind of in place, where they initially pegged it to the dollar, but now they removed the peg gradually, but it's still a directly managed system. Is the reason they've had currency crisis in the past. I mean, in just last year, they've had a lot of currency issues to the point that now they have 6 different exchange rate regimes in place, all in an attempt to manage the currency situation in the country. It appears that with the introduction of a window they call the NAFEX window for foreigners investing in Nigeria and all of that, it has reduced the pressure somewhat. But that is the situation they face now. We are in a very desirable situation. You allow the markets to determine your exchange rate. And let me point out that currency depreciation really is not bad. It depends on the kind of economy you run. Countries like China would deliberately devalue or depreciate their currency because they are dominantly an export-based country. When your currency depreciates, what it means is that it will cost a foreigner less to import from you. So if you package, and that is why I think this industrialization drive, and if we do it well, we could even be benefiting from depreciation, and then stop importation. If you produce goods that are quality enough, and then even your currency depreciate, what it means is that previously, say a dollar is equivalent to a cedi. So someone needs $10 to buy goods worth 10 cedi in Ghana. If a dollar is now, maybe you now need say 5 cedi to a dollar to import the same good, what it means is that $1 is worth 5 cedi now in Ghana. So your $1 can buy a good that is worth 5 cedi in Ghana. In essence, that same 10 cedi good you used to buy with $10, you now need $5 to buy the same good. That is really what it means. So depreciation is good for countries that can export, that can produce for the export market. And that is really what China does. They are the biggest exporters in there. I mean, they have taken over. So almost all companies are setting up subsidiaries in China because of cheap labor, cheap resources, and they are able to export it to other destinations. And it's cheaper. So fixed exchange rate regime determining, pegging the currency that this is the rate we must trade it. It's not a way to go now, because one, we are a member of IMF, and then every other country is desiring to go the flexible way. What we need to do, in my view, and I don't know if we've gotten there or you're going to ask that, but we need to control the structure of our economy really well. Currently, the only export and foreign exchange earners in Ghana are gold, cocoa, crude oil, and then some of the non-traditional exports. I mean, we have a number of nurses walking down our streets who can't even be enrolled domestically. Have we thought of exporting human resource? I mean, training skilled labor and exporting them. Have we thought of adding value to the cocoa, the gold, and every other thing we export in the accrued form? Because currency stability is a function of dollar supply or FX supply domestically in the local interbank market. If it is not available, demand pressures will cause depreciation. And if it's available, the currency will be stable. You realize from the beginning of the year, I mean this year, till end of first quarter, the currency was really appreciating. We appreciated to the point of 0.27% against the US dollar. That is really what it was. The current trend that we are seeing, which is the depreciation, I wouldn't say it's alarming, it's mild. And it is not caused by our weak fundamentals. It is caused by external pressures coming really from the US and then the Euro area. You see what is happening in the US. Fiscal stimulus has taken place. Donald Trump has passed his tax law, injecting so much into the real sector, into infrastructure expansion, and all of that. I mean, the dollar has picked up as a result, and then that has translated into higher yields. The US central bank is tightening monetary policy. What that means is that they are raising interest rates. And then, you know, during the 2008 crisis, and then when there were difficulties, monetary policy would losing increased money supply in the system to make money available. And then that is inflationary, that causes inflation. The more money there is in the system, the higher the inflation. Now they feel that they have attained a level of growth that is appreciable and can be sustained over time. And then they feel that inflation is gathering momentum and they want to curb it, so they are raising interest rate gradually. US is a bigger country, bigger prospect, bigger interest from investors, and most of the investors that come here are from there or look to that market. So if interest rates are going high up there, people repatriate their money. So people are selling their bonds they are holding in Ghana and then moving to those markets. People are looking to doing business with the US now because the outlook seems to be improving rather than emerging markets like us where our risk are pronounced. Is the reason the cedi is depreciated. It's not because fundamentals are weak. If we're talking of fundamentals, we should be rather seeing appreciation. Our foreign reserve, the totality of foreign currency we have sitting with the World Bank, that when there is need we can, or sitting with that when there is need we can resort to support our imports, is actually I think 7 point something billion at the end of April 2018. That is equivalent to 4.4 months of import cover. What it means is that we have enough reserve to import for 4 good months and we will not have issues, right? That is what it means. Previously, it was as low as 2.5. We ended 2016 with I think 3.5 months of import cover and thereabout. But currently we are 4.4 months. There is enough ammunition. A lot of things that feed into cedi depreciation are how much government spend and how much government overspend its budget. Because if you're overspending your budget without real productivity, you cause people to import more to meet their new lifestyles. So currency will depreciate. And if inflation is rising, it has a way of feeding into currency depreciation. And then, of course, a lot others. All those indicators are pointing to the positive side. depreciation is inflation
So
is
mainly
coming down.
what's causing it is repatriation of investment.
Exactly, external forces. Repatriation is part one, and then if you watch our forex markets now, the recent bond issuances haven't attracted as much demand as previously.
Let me bring. I'll get you back, but let me bring
Okay.
Charles in here. Hello, Charles.
Yes, I'm here.
By the end of this show, I would have at least gotten a diploma in economy after the show. But I have two questions for you. Number one is, what's the actual value of the cedi? Is this what it is? I mean, or is this an artificial value where, because of the injection of central bank, we're getting this 4.6? Is the cedi actually maybe 6 to a dollar, or is the 4.6 the actual value? That's one. And then before you go, I wanted to find out, now that we are not producing, depreciation would have been good if we were exporting. But if we are not exporting, should we boost up the value of the cedi? I mean, so two questions for you.
Right. Thank you, Nana. But before I address that, I'm not sure that investors are dumping their investment in Ghana because American system is good, as my colleague in the studio is alluding to. The current exchange rate, there's a small amount of speculation in there. Speculative increase. So because if people speculate that it's going to happen, banks themselves can play around the speculation and make some profit out of speculation. Now, the last bond that was raised, it was successful. The money came in to show up, and it's there for all to see. Hopefully, government itself, through Ghana Cocoa Marketing Board, will be going again to raise money through cocoa marketing company for cocoa purchases for this system. So in itself, it's working. But the real crux of the matter is that we have had a situation where volumes of oil didn't happen the way it should happen because we shut down the FPSO for maintenance. And if we are producing 150,000 barrels a day, a shutdown for 3 to 4 weeks or even 6 weeks, that is a lot of dollars that will cost. Same point on Ghana Gas. Ghana Gas also shut down during for maintenance. We lost something out of it. When you look at gold, AGC in the past years shut down that system. They are now coming back and revamping it. And therefore, if we were doing XY for gold export, the volumes would have gone down because WASI itself was not working like those days. So that's the crux of the point. That's why we're having this. Meanwhile, our demand for forex was still happening. We were still paying the loans that borrowed. We're still importing drugs that we were using for our health sector. We're still importing equipment. And there's some of the industries who had borrowed money for infrastructure in the past. They were still servicing it. So these are the real things that were happening. That's the experience that I've seen with the markets that I played. So it's there, it's happening. So it isn't largely because some people are dumping it, not at all. Now, in terms of the question you asked, yes, the value of our currency relative to another currency is dependent on who is buying and who is selling. So if you have more people who demand our cedis instead of the dollars, really you have an appreciation of the cedi. If you have more people who don't need our cedis, then our cedi will depreciate. So if you look at the same currency depreciation, you match the dollar you match the pound, you match the CFA, they have not depreciated about the same rate because of the requirement. If you look at those who go to China, our colleagues, our friends who go to China, they buy dollars. When they get to China, they convert it to RMB China, which in itself also cost them money. Some of them have learned their lessons and they are now going to China with Chinese currency because some of the banks have introduced that. Yeah, the likes of EcoBank and Big Bank introduced. So in reality, whereas they would have gone for dollars, now they are going for the Chinese currency when they're going to China. So the value of us depends on who needs what and how much the person. Now, going forward, Nana, I think that the right thing, what is happening, everything should be targeted. We must target it, for me, must target it at the agro sector. Because the agro sector is the only place that can take a lot of our young men and women into the sector. Processing agriculture, exporting it. If you go to all our hotels, all the restaurants, every food on the table, if 90% of it is goods that are made in Ghana, then we have the success story. That is where we should carry the hotels, the restaurants, coffee bars, and all to be using it. And that's where Ghana have a success story. But where we have hotels importing tomatoes, importing the sausages, and so on and so forth, we have a problem.
Let me take a quick break here. And Charles, I'm going to take a quick break and come back. And when I come back, I want to find out that because we are so import dependent, and we've been talking since Gordgisberg's era that we're going to add value, and we haven't added that value. Should we force the value of the city to go up? Because otherwise, then it's just up, and we are not taking advantage, and we are suffering for suffering's sake. We're coming back. Well, thank you very much for staying, and we are being educated as to depreciation in currencies and some of the things that central bank and government should do to try and stabilize. But we have a very interesting argument here, and courage begs to differ on Charles's assessment. Charles seems to think that there's the shutdown of the FPSO, the low prices on oil, on gold on the market. That's what's causing the cities to shake. But you have an argument. So, Courage, I want to hear you.
What I think really is that Charles, I appreciate the point you're making. So gold production, crude oil production, and all those other natural resources we export are a big part of our export earnings. Granted, fantastic point. And then I agree that when there are shortfalls in such areas, it should be affecting, or it could be affecting, our currency. Granted. But I'm citing these examples that in 2016, second quarter, when the FPSO in Nkrumah shut down, we had only one oil field on stream at the time. The 10 field, the Sankofa fields were not producing. But within that period, we didn't have depreciation issues in the currency so much. In fact, really, the CD started depreciating towards the end of the year, November, thereabout. That was where we saw pronounced depreciation. In fact, up to November, early November last year, the currency depreciation was below 2%. It was after November that we jumped to the level we saw 6% we ended the year. So the point I'm making is that the shortfall in oil production was not the main driver of depreciation in 2016.
But was it a contributing factor?
Of course, it played a role. This year, so far, we have two other oil fields supplementing the Jubilee field. This shutdown is planned. I mean, in 2016, 2017, a number of gold mining firms were equally shut down. In fact, in 2017, we had small-scale mining, which is a big part of gold produced in Ghana, entirely shut down, even though we know some of them were producing, but we know that a chunk of them had to go home because of the cleaning exercise that was going on. And then there were a substantial shortfall in gold production and all of that. But again, we didn't have currency depreciation issues as pronounced as in previous years, in 2017 and even so far this year. Beginning of this year till now, yes, FPSO shut down somewhere, I think in February, thereabout, but we had the CD actually appreciating in that period. I mean, gold production and all of that, I'm not sure had picked up significantly, but then we had currency appreciating until end of first quarter. The problem we're seeing, I'm saying, as more of external pressure. I sit behind the data. I see bond trades on a daily basis, and I can tell you in authority that over the last 2 weeks, the volumes of trade, secondary market bond trade we saw was beyond normal. Normally, you see maximum 150 million trades in a week. We recorded in excess of 500 million in the last week, and in the previous one, I mean, similar levels. People are, most of these investors, the holders of our bonds, and if you look at the structure of our domestic bond holdings, the longer term holders tend to be more of the foreigners. We have as much as 70 or so % of foreigners holding between the 7 to 15-year domestic bonds. And so any little change in the outlook would cause these people or trigger sell-offs. And we've seen a few of those in the past weeks or the last few weeks. It's triggering. And the reason, largely, you attribute to that if you speak to the market participants and the kind of investors we have, they see exchange risk emerging. And the risk emerging is because we've seen some pressures. Now, of course, speculation is a big part, because when currency is depreciating fast, and then people are seeing the trends, they begin to wonder what is happening. Let's buy some currencies and hoard. And that is why it's not even advisable for the central bank to immediately jump into the market and start pumping currency in. They even acknowledge from my interaction with them that they see the current problem as not from internal, and so they are careful expending their reserves on stabilizing it because the monies might be going into wrong hands. So yes, gold production, yes, oil production staff would play a role, but the current situation we are having, I'm saying it's not abnormal, it's no outside control. I'm saying it is more of an external pressure that is depressing the cedi now, and it's a matter of time. So
it's temporary.
It's a matter, yeah, of course. It's a matter of time. It depends on what you're looking at now. There is the interbank exchange rate, there is the forex market rate. The interbank rate, as we speak now, is around 4.5, thereabout. Between end of quarter one till now, the value the currency has lost is 5 pesos on the interbank market. In fact, so depreciation is around 8.5%, it's 0.85% now. It's less than 1% for beginning of a year to now. So if you call this pronounced and alarming as people are making it look like, then you create speculative tendencies. And that is why I personally think we should be cautious how we talk about this. When the currency was appreciating, people didn't talk about it. Depreciation has consequence for you and I, the cost of goods and services we buy. And so we need to be careful we are driving the right message home. The currency is not in crisis. The current trend is because of external pressures coming from the Eurozone, coming from the US. It's a matter of time that those sentiments will normalize and we'll see stability re-emerge again. I think that we will end the year with less than 5% Cedi depreciation per my estimation. I think that by early quarter 3, we should see a return to stability.
Christmas
in
is
the
coming. Have you factored all that in?
Yeah, so that is the point I wanted to make.
Charles, I'm sure you want to rebut on that.
No, I'm not. No, I mean, he's alluded to the point I just made.
Okay.
That I was trying to emphasize that there's a bit of speculation in there. Those trading behind the scenes and all the. Yes, it will happen, but it's not the key point for experiencing the depreciation of the currency.
Okay, then let me move.
I mean,
Charles, sorry.
money doesn't like noise.
If there's not enough, then let me move to my next question. That since we are not capitalizing on the depreciation, should we now try and force appreciation and benefit, because it doesn't look like in our lifetime we're going to export that much, So since we are going to import, should we force appreciation?
No, it all depends the fundamentals. But when it falls, for how long can enforce anything. But when the forces of the market rather determine the value of a particular currency, then it stays and it stays forever. It means that's why we say that the fundamentals are correct. So the fundamentals means that the foundation is right. But if it falls, that means that the foundation is not there. The fundamentals are not right. Therefore, definitely you will not be stable. You will be stable as long as you are possible. When you take your eye off, it will depreciate. When you take your eye off, it will appreciate. But if you allow the force of the market, there's certain amount of predictability, and that's what everybody wants to be able to predict with a sure amount of certainty that this is going to happen, and therefore I am going to do this. Therefore, I am going to invest in this. Fortunately for us, when the government introduced the 15-year bond and things like that, the rate that they use has become a benchmark. Some of the banks who are now receiving applications for loans beyond 3 years. Now the banks are looking at 5-year loan, they are looking at 7-year loan, 8-year loan, 10-year loan, and it's becoming very interesting. But this thing takes some amount of time. It doesn't come overnight. Market is so slow because you are dealing with OPM, other people's money. So it takes some amount of time before the market is formed. And with time, which is what I'm concluding on, with time, it would all pan up nicely. By September, October, the cocoa board money will come in, volumes of oil will come in, more gas will come in. Hopefully, the bauxite thing will come in.
Charles,
hopefully, our loan thing will come in. From time coming.
Thank you, Charles. Because of time, I have to end it there and come to studio. And I have a big question for you, but small time. And my question again is, since one district, one factory is not there, since planting for food and jobs, it's not happening. I mean, should we force appreciation so that we at least enjoy it more?
To do this, Nana, you need sufficient reserves. Because when you are forcing an appreciation, it means you should be pumping more foreign currency into the system than demanded. That is the only way you can force an appreciation.
Which means you have to find it from somewhere.
We need to find it. You see, our reserve can only import up to 4.4 months of import cover as we stand. And even now with the recent injections into the market to support, I'm sure it's declined. China, as a country, as at April 2018, had a month of import cover to 18.2 months of import cover. What it means is that for 18 months, nearly 2 years, they could import all they need without needing new currency. That is their reserve. For such a country, US will call them currency manipulators because they stand ready to support their currency to any level desired. We can't do that because we don't have the reserves.
Oh, thank you very much. That was Courage Boti, who is an economist, and Charles Mensah joined us, currency analyst, joined us on Skype, and you joined us at home. Thank you so much. It's been interesting. But as I always say, we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you for watching.
Natural mistake and natural